What's the difference between judgment and judgment? They both sound like identical words, don't they? Well, this blew my mind, and I'd like to do some word spelunking with you because I think this just kind of blows the top off. There is judgment spelled with an E, and there is judgment without an E. When we're looking at what judgment means, let's take a look at one of those words. We're going to take a look at judgment with an E. Ready? Judgment with an E has this broad spectrum of nuance. We have this one possibility of the legal document which states the reason for a judicial decision. That's something from the court. Opinion, judgment, that's pretty straightforward. But then, check this out. Judgment with an E also means the capacity to assess situations or circumstances shrewdly and to draw sound conclusions. That capacity to assess situations or circumstances and shrewdly draw sound conclusions is different. It has a different nuance from an opinion formed by judging something. Then, on top of that, there's the mental ability to understand and discern between differences. Again, it's a slightly different nuance. Then also, judgment with an E includes the cognitive process of reaching a decision or drawing a conclusion. Judgment with an E holds more of a sense of weighing facts, weighing information, discerning, utilizing the wisdom of experience and knowledge and research in order to come to a conclusion. There is that judgment, that weighing of options. And you can even hear it in that synonym of that mental ability to make that decision. Now, let's take a look at judgment with no E. You ready? All right, I'm going to do this. There we go. Judgment with no E has the synonym of the opinion. There's still that diagnosis, there's still the deduction, there's still the appraisal, but it holds the nuance of a conviction. There is the sense that still has that sense of wisdom and discernment, but there is also that sense, that sensibility. Then there is also the verdict. That again has a little bit of a nuance of that legalistic weight to it. The decree, the order, the adjudication. And this is the one that I love. Against your better judgment as a synonym to the word judgment with no E. Such as in spite of your own better mind, with reservations. I'm reluctant about that. So again, the difference between judgment with no E and judgment with an E seems slight. But think about that judgment when it comes to our sense of self, when we encounter a person with an opposing point of view, when we encounter someone who we find that we cannot come to agreement on. There are polar differences between our experience. How do we know that's a polar opposite? What is the judgment that we not only feel in ourselves, but what is the judgment that we feel from the other person? And there is that weighing of wisdom, that weighing of research, that weighing of knowledge. And contrarily, there is the weight of opinion. Here's why I think this is so important. The reason that I feel that this distinction is so important and to include in our understanding is that we in our world are incredibly polarized right now. We have been for a while, and this global pandemic has just turned all of the knobs all the way up. Now everything is hot. We find that we find visceral responses and reactions within our hearts and within our minds and within our spirits, depending upon who we happen to be speaking with. Each one of those responses makes sense because judgment, whether it's with an E or without an E, must occur through the weighing of knowledge, wisdom, opinion, belief. And that judgment, by the very nature of the words themselves, are kind of an end point of a dialogue. When we reach a judgment, there may not be room for movement in there. So here's why I feel this is important. There are some judgments, such as the judgment that my life is worth more than another person's life, which I personally find to be abhorrent. It opposes every aspect of what I believe to be true and how I seek to live my life. That recognition is, in and of itself, a position, an opinion, as well as a definitive sense of self that I have. It's my cognitive process that helps me to reach the decision that my life should be as valuable and as precious as anyone else's life out there. And that is something that I believe to be true because I believe in the nobility of human beings. That being said, if I find, or if any person finds, that the decisions and judgments of another person run directly counter to my belief in the nobility of human beings and the belief that each person who is alive deserves dignity and respect as a human being with no caveats, that will definitely cause an internal response. That makes sense. So when we are polarized, ultimately the discernment that we find that we must engage in becomes that cognitive process, that capacity to assess the situation, what is being said by another person, that opinion that I've formed. Judgment in and of itself is not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's a period at the end of a sentence. Do you want to end that sentence? If so, if that is a line that you feel that you need to draw, okay. My line is in the belief and the defense of the nobility of inherent within human beings, that we can be better than we are, that each person's, regardless of color, creed, identity, are valuable, are precious, and unique. And that I long to live in a world where the judgment that is present affords a space for the flourishing of that nobility, for the thriving of that life, of that person. So that was some spelunking of words, because this is a complex topic. This isn't just a little tiny cave. There are so many different passageways within this concept. But we are not only in this world, but certainly in this time right now, in this time of pandemic, we are fraught with polarization and with fear. And when we as human beings are afraid, it makes sense that we as human beings wish to bring an end to that reality of fear. We want that fear to be over. And judgments are very easy to make. This is not easy. This is hard. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming. If you made it to the end of this video, my hat is off to you. If I were wearing one, I'd actually take it off. But I believe in our capacity to engage in dialogue. I believe in our capacity to acknowledge that sometimes the judgment that we lay against ourselves can even be harsher than the judgment that we feel from another person. I'm also very aware that in times of tremendous strife and in times of tremendous social upheaval, sometimes judgments need to be made. Internal judgments, the recognition of this personal belief that I have is something that I judge to be of tremendous value in my life. What is that belief for you? What is that stance? That idea? And engaging that matters. I'm Catherine Gabriel-Jones. I'm an encouragement coach, and good God in heaven, language might be fun. Words might be great toys, but sometimes even the best toy in the world can be all kinds of complex. I believe in our capacity to engage in dialogue when dialogue is challenging. And I long for the time when we can sit together and I can look at you and say, I believe in you.